Welcome to the Movement Leader Podcast, growing together as leaders.
Hey, what's up, leaders? We are really excited today because we have a really special group of podcasts here. We have our friend Jeannette here. We met her last week. She brought in a presentation that was incredible to our staff on suicide training, and we want you guys to have the same training. So she has agreed to be with us for the next 4 podcasts, and today we're going to be talking about a couple of things. But first, I want to let her introduce herself because she is a woman of many titles.
I do. I am. So I am Jeannette Curtis. I'm the Executive Director at Fairfield County 211, and our agency answers the local 24-hour crisis line in 988 for Fairfield County. I also have the honor of serving as the co-facilitator for our local Fairfield County Suicide Prevention Coalition.
That's awesome. That's incredible. So it really is a high honor that she's here talking to us. So we're so excited. For this first training, we're going to be talking about suicide statistics, suicide myths and facts, just things that we can be looking out for when we're dealing with potential situations that may arise. And we want you guys to be fully equipped for that. So Jeannette, hit us with some statistics, hit us with some facts.
So I think, when we talk about suicide, a lot of people don't think about it unless it impacts them.
Yeah.
So I always think it's important to kind of share the statistics, like what's happening across the U.S., what's it look like in our state, and then what's happening locally, because people need to understand that suicide happens. It's a major public health crisis, and it's happening here in our community.
Yeah.
So when we look at it, as a whole across the United States, over 49,000 people die every year by suicide. And it averages out to about once every 11 minutes. So probably by the time we're done with this podcast, there'll have been at least one suicide death in the United States.
Wow.
So it's important to understand that it does happen here and it impacts everyone in our community.
Yeah.
There is no specific socioeconomic system, it's just, it happens here and it happens to everyone. The big thing that we see is when we talk about gender, men and women, we see that men die by suicide more often than women.
Yeah.
And it's significant.
Yeah. That really is interesting. Last week when we were talking about it, I don't think I would have just guessed that, but as we were talking about the why behind that, that was really interesting to me. They kind of asked, why do you think that happens? And we talked about men are less likely to reach out for help than women are. They're less likely to talk about their feelings and all of those things. And that is a truly devastating thing. And so something that comes to mind for our situation when we're dealing with students is we're in a unique situation that weekly they are meeting and talking about their feelings, talking about the things that are going on in their lives. And so if a student says something, take it seriously.
Yes,
in a big way.
Absolutely. And we find that the younger we can get to people, like if we can talk to kids about it's okay to not be okay and let them know that it's okay to talk about this, we see the impact that it has.
Yeah.
So while men complete suicide more often, they make up over 50% of the population, but they make up almost 80% of suicide
that is wild.
deaths.
Yeah.
Well, men use a more lethal means when it comes to suicide because it's almost always firearms.
Right.
And that is pretty much fatal regardless. Whereas women, they don't die as often by suicide. However, they attempt 3 times more often. And it's normally because there's time to save them.
Yeah.
They normally take pills and there's always time to save them because after you take the pills, you kind of have that moment like, I don't want to do this.
Man.
So you can get help. Whereas if gentlemen use firearms, it's pretty lethal from the get-go. And when across the nation, suicide is the second leading cause of death between ages of 10 and 34.
Wow.
That's where most of our youth are, our college age students, and that's their second leading cause of death across the U.S.
Wow.
And it's devastating because it is 100% preventable.
Yeah.
If we teach them now when they're younger,
Right.
let's talk about this. Let's go ask someone for help. Letting them know that we're willing to have this hard conversation with them. It's so impactful as they get older.
Yeah.
Because, people talk about toxic masculinity. Men don't want to talk about their feelings. And I think that is a terrible stigma and we absolutely need to break it. So the sooner we can start talking to young men about the importance of mental health and reaching out, that's when we're going to start seeing a more lasting impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a big thing. So encouragement to you leaders right now. I mean, this is for the guys and girls groups, but even guys, you guys are making a wild impact here in students where they might not have anybody to talk to. If we're creating space to have conversations, this is not flippant. This isn't just wasting 40 minutes. I mean, it can be life-saving.
Yeah, 100%. Letting people who are suicidal, they need to be heard.
Yeah.
They need to know that they matter and what they're saying is actually being listened to.
Yeah.
And that's where the impact is. So if you have 40 minutes to dedicate to this one kid who is in this mental health crisis, that's what's going to save a life.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Incredible. We have an incredible opportunity.
Yeah.
Definitely for these students.
Absolutely. So when we look at, we look at the national statistics and there's still that disconnect, like that doesn't happen here. That's not going to impact me. And when we look at Ohio, suicide is actually, I would say it puts us at 32nd out of
Wow.
all the states. So
Wow.
we're kind of smack dab in the middle, but Ohio follows the same trends as the national.
Yeah.
More men die by suicide. The interesting thing about Ohio is that it's between the ages of 45 to 54 that has
that's
the highest
interesting.
rates of
So
suicide.
nationally it's 10 to 34, but in Ohio specifically it's later on.
So nationally, the 10 to 34 group that's their second leading cause of death.
Okay.
But when we look at Ohio,
Wow.
the age group that
Specifically.
we're looking at is kind of middle age.
Yeah.
And again, men.
Yeah.
And if we dig deeper, it's white men. So it's middle-aged white non-Hispanic men
Yeah.
that are dying by suicide more frequently in the state of Ohio.
Yeah.
And when we look at it, again, firearms.
Yeah.
Firearms are the most common method of suicide for all target populations
Yeah.
in Ohio. Over 50% of suicides are firearms.
Wow.
So there's some really great initiatives at the state level. LifeSide Ohio is working with gun shops to talk to them. Hey, can we provide gun locks? Like the Suicide Prevention Coalition has gun locks available for free.
Wow.
So if you have youth in your home and you want to secure a firearm, we'll give you a gun lock. We would never tell someone you can't have guns or we don't think you should have guns, but we want you to have safety. Yes, that's the big thing. And when it comes to anything mental health related, that's what we want to do. We want to ensure that the person in crisis is safe.
Yeah.
And if it's something as simple as just putting a gun lock on a gun, then that's what we want to help with.
Make it as easy as it can be.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at a local level, and this gets into the work of what we do for the local Suicide Prevention Coalition, our mission is just simply to reduce the instances of suicide in Fairfield County. And we're going to do that through education.
Right.
And we're going to do that through letting folks know what resources are available so that when they're in crisis, they don't have to, how do I find this? Who do I contact? Because you're already in crisis and upset. And it's hard enough to remember, who am I going to call? Who's going to help me? So our goal is just to educate the community so you can go to anyone and say, help.
Yep.
And they're able to say, sure, let's call 988. Let's call 211. Let me hear what you have to say. And that's the biggest thing that we need to do. In Fairfield County, we see probably over the last 5 years, I would say on average between 18 to 21 deaths by suicide every year. And one of the initiatives we do as the Fairfield County Suicide Prevention Coalition is we provide loss kits. And it stands for Local Outreach to Suicide Survivors. And it's just a folder full of a lot of resources for the folks who are left behind. Those are the next of kin of the people who've experienced a loss of a loved one by suicide. So far this year, I have sent out over 25 kits.
Wow.
So we are seeing, I don't want to say a record number because back during COVID,
for sure.
we were up to almost 30, but we have really seen an increase this year. And we are still seeing it trend toward middle-aged and older white men.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
It almost always trends that way. So we're no different than the national or the state when we look at the demographic that's impacted. One of the things that I can report for Fairfield County is deaths by suicide for folks under the age of 18 have been sitting at one or less for the
Wow.
last several years. And I truly believe it's because we can get this resource and this information
Yeah.
in front of people that can talk to kids.
Yeah.
And we've really concentrated those prevention efforts in schools and churches
Yeah.
and places where youth gather.
Yep.
And I think that that has led to a better support system for our
Right.
youth. And I mean, our kids now are more willing to talk about mental
Yep.
health. And, you know, they'll say, I don't feel good, you know, but it's not my body, it's my brain.
Yeah.
And they're willing to have those conversations. We're creating safe spaces in schools through
Yeah.
hope squads
Yep.
and like relaxation
Incredible.
rooms
Yeah.
that let kids know your mental health is important. You know, and that's something new that started within the last 10 years. And we have
Yeah.
seen a decrease in the number of deaths in youth since then. So it shows
Yeah.
you the impact that just making
Absolutely.
a couple changes and educating folks
Yep.
makes.
Yeah.
So I think that that's always
Absolutely.
important too.
So important. And you had said something about these hope kits or lost kits.
Yeah,
That's
lost
what you said,
kits.
a lost kit. I remember something that you guys had said that suicide, someone who has experienced a family member or someone close to them who had passed away from suicide had a higher risk of struggling with the same thing, of having suicidal thoughts or even taking action in that sense. So then even where we're working with students and the age range is about the age of maybe their dads or uncles or, people that they would know, like it might not be an encounter that you have that is someone immediately suicidal, but we might even encounter a student who is experiencing it by someone they're related to or someone who they're close to. Yeah. And that's equally as important to dive in to help. And it's kind of awesome.
They say that statistically, there are 6 to 11 individuals impacted by the death of a suicide, and those are close relationships. So kids, moms, dad, grandparents, like those are 6 people there. But then you go out that next ring. Now you got aunts and uncles and cousins. And then you go the next ring out and you've got friends and people from church and pastors. And it's the ring just gets bigger and bigger. So many more people are impacted by one single suicide death than we really think about.
Right.
And you're right. If you have experienced the loss of a loved one by suicide, it puts you at a higher risk to complete suicide.
Right. Man, it's heartbreaking. That's heartbreaking. Yeah, that is something that I think is something we've just got to keep an eye on. I mean, in our community, when these things are happening, just keeping our eye on those people who are impacted, especially if they're in our ministry, really keeping a close pulse. Are those kits that you guys hand out, lost kits, are those available to anyone else to obtain like if we were to experience someone that has experienced that of getting them connected to you guys, how would we do that?
Yeah. So you can reach out to me directly. Part
Yeah.
of what I do for the coalition is postvention.
Okay.
So if you would like the resources in a lost kit or a lost kit, you can contact me directly
Yeah.
just by dialing 211.
There you go.
And we can get that information to folks. And I think it's important that, especially with the youth that you're working with, grief hits different, especially for youth. And suicide grief hits harder. There's a lot of survivor's guilt that what could I do? What should I have done differently? What did I say? So if you're working with a youth who has experienced that loss, and it might even be grandparents, because the older population, they don't want to be a burden.
Right.
So a lot of the times we see suicide there. So you could have a youth whose grandparent has died by suicide, and talking to them about getting help and what the resources are extremely important. But there's a lot of myths out there too when we talk about suicide, that people hear them and they, oh, that has to be true.
Yeah.
So I think we should talk about some of those myths.
Absolutely.
And I know we hear, we think, well, no one can stop a suicide.
Yeah.
Like it's inevitable, and it's not.
How?
All it takes is just asking a couple questions. And it could be something as simple as, are you okay? How are you doing? You want to go talk about it? Like a question that simple can save a life.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a scary topic when we, people think suicide, people think mental health and the stigma, and they don't know how to ask that question, which is something we will cover.
Right.
But knowing that suicide is not inevitable, like it is the most preventable cause of death ever. So don't be afraid to ask the questions and talk to someone if you think that they may be suicidal or might be just having some dark thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think something interesting is taking note of someone's demeanor, taking note of little things, like little cues that they'll give. And the reality, the cool thing about these leaders with these students is they're with them every week. And so a lot of times they know them and they know their baseline. So if you're noticing something atypical, not to be nervous, to just ask a question. It could be more impactful than they think.
That's all it takes. The people
Yeah.
just want to be heard and know that you care, and that's the big thing.
Yeah.
It used to be that, as a society, we thought that if we asked someone about
Yeah.
suicide, that it would put the idea in their
Yes.
head.
Yes.
And that's not the case. Someone's either thinking about it or they're not.
Yeah.
You simply saying, are you thinking about suicide? Are you suicidal? Have you ever attempted suicide? Like, that's not going to put it in their head. In fact, asking those questions shows them that you're comfortable having that tough conversation with them. And it's important because even if they're not suicidal, they're going to remember that, hey, you know what? She was willing to ask me that tough question, and I'm going to go talk to her about it.
Yep.
And that's it. Just knowing that you're willing to have the conversation will help people. And it's a myth that if you talk about it, it's going to put it in their head. It's not a contagion.
No.
It's not an illness like that.
That's so well put. Well, and there's also the thought of if someone mentions it, they're just attention seeking, or there's no like reality behind it. That's not true. I've heard that so many times of like someone who's actually going to take their own life wouldn't tell you. I've heard that. I've heard that so many times. Yeah.
And, they say that the people who talk about it don't do it. And they do say it's attention seeking behavior. But do you really want to take the chance that one time you blow it off and because that's just attention seeking and that person dies? Like, you can't. You can't take the chance. You've got to ask them because it's not true. A lot of the times if people are talking about suicide, they're asking for help. And it's our duty as human beings to just hear them and have that conversation and do what we can to save them. We hear that too, that like only doctors or experts can prevent suicide. And that's not true. We can do it just by having a conversation, a phone call, a text message. Like, anyone can stop suicide. It's so preventable. It's just scary. It's a really scary topic. So it's a hard conversation to have. So,
It can be super, super scary to jump in and just blatantly ask someone that question. But like you said, guys, if you're in a position where you think that potentially this could be something that a student is going through, even if there was a moment, just a specific instance where I had a student say, I've just had a lot of dark thoughts lately. And it was just during the prayer time. And we kept her after. And through conversation, she had expressed that she was experiencing suicidal thoughts. And we went deeper. We asked, have you ever made a plan? Do you have a plan? All of these things. And we got her help immediately. And I don't know if that saved her life, but it really could have. And we know that, she is well today. And so you don't want to risk it. And you also don't want to later on be like, that was kind of weird. I'll text her later. No, talk with them right in that moment. Pull them aside, have a conversation because, I know it can be intimidating, but it could be life-saving. And we're also not asking you to do this without resources. You guys have some incredible resources that can set our team up and just anybody up to help intervene. You don't have to be a doctor or a professional, but we have resources at our fingertips that can help us address the situation immediately. Can you tell us a little bit more about those?
So probably the number one resource that you have available to you is calling 988. 988 was a 3-digit dial that was set aside by the federal government to take the place of the National Suicide Prevention Crisis Line. So when people called the national line, they had to remember 1-800-243-8255. When you're in crisis,
that's hard.
Like, you can't remember all of those numbers. So unless you have it in front of you, you're not seeing it. And, the government recognized that. The people in crisis need to be able to access services quicker. 988. So anyone can pick up the phone anywhere in the United States and dial 988, and they will be connected to a local crisis center that can help them. For Fairfield County, that's our agency at 211, and we staff that 24/7, and it's live answer. So once people are connected to our center, they're going to talk to someone who lives here locally. All of our staff are familiar with what's available because they live here. This is their community.
So then the difference between 988 and 211 is 211 is our local and 988 is national. Is that correct?
So 211 would be more basic needs. Like,
okay.
I'm really struggling. I'm in crisis because I don't have food with the SNAP
Okay.
benefit issue
Yeah.
we're seeing
Yeah.
now. People can call us and get referrals to food pantries or
Yeah.
utility assistance and rent assistance. It's more that
Okay.
basic needs.
Okay.
988 is mental health.
Okay.
So maybe a trip to a food pantry does
Yeah.
de-escalate someone to get them out of that mental
Absolutely.
health
Yeah.
crisis. We can do that on 988 too.
Yeah.
But 988 is more about those mental health crisis, suicide prevention, and we won't define what a crisis is. So if it is a suicidal youth, we will work through that. Or if it's a single dad trying to figure out how he's going to feed his kids,
Yep.
we definitely help with that too. But 988 is available at all times. We have talked about that this is a tough conversation to have.
Yeah.
And if you don't think you're ready to have that conversation, just say, hey, I think we should call 988.
Absolutely.
And you just pull out your phone and dial 988
Yep.
and you can talk to someone. You can still be a part of the conversation by staying with the person in crisis, but you don't have to carry that weight alone.
Yeah.
So 988 is probably the best resource that we have
Yeah.
available in Fairfield County when it comes to kind of that immediate de-escalation and support. We have a local crisis line too, which is 740-687-TALK. But again, long digit dial when
Yeah.
you're in crisis, but historically that's been here for about 30 years.
Yeah.
So it's not a line we want to get rid of,
Right.
because we still receive 2/3 of
yeah.
our crisis calls
Oh,
on that
wow.
line.
Wow.
Yeah. About 1 in 3 calls that we answer come in on the 988 line. All the rest of them
Wow.
come in on that local line.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. So we don't want to get rid of that. We
No.
want to have as many ways as possible for
Absolutely.
people to contact us. And then there's always 211.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you're working with someone in crisis, you don't need to talk to 988. You need to know where to go to
Where to
get help.
go? Yeah.
So then you can call 211 and say, hey, I'm working with my friend here and I need to know where they can go to get mental health help. Where can they go to get an assessment? Where
Yeah.
can they go for meetings, support groups? That would be an appropriate call for 211. And then we have a service in Fairfield County, and it's a mobile assessment, and
Okay.
it's available for anyone,
Wow.
any age. With the mobile assessment, if the person is in immediate crisis, they can respond within an hour.
Wow.
And that's a service offered through New Horizons, and it's 24/7.
Wow.
So if it's 3:00 in the morning and you're working with someone or talking to someone who's suicidal, we can get an assessment to them within an hour.
And how does that happen? Does someone come out to you? Wow.
Yes, someone will come in. If that's what you need, New Horizons will respond to where they feel safe, where
Wow.
the caller feels
Man,
safe.
that's awesome.
And to
That's
request that,
incredible.
you just call 988. Like, that's all you have to do.
That's
988
an
is
incredible resource.
Yeah.
Wow.
988 will be your doorway to services.
Yeah.
That's the easiest number to remember and the best point of contact.
Yeah.
We also, so you're working with youth. There's a program in Ohio. It's called MRSS, and it stands for Mobile Response and Stabilization Services. This is specifically for youth 24 and under.
Okay.
This is for youth experiencing maybe a behavioral health crisis.
Okay.
Before it turns into a mental health crisis, let's support the family.
Okay.
MRSS is the program that's going to do that. And
Wow.
again, they'll contact the family, usually within a couple hours, to start the process. They'll do the assessment, the intake. There is follow-up and
Yeah.
continual ongoing support to help not only the kiddo in crisis, but to support the whole family. So that's an amazing
Yeah.
program that we have available through the state of Ohio. And again, intake, you dial 988
Yeah.
and request that I'd like to talk to someone about
Yeah.
MRSS, and we can support them.
Could you give me an example of a situation where that would apply? That where you would make that call to MRSS?
So I'll give you an example that happened.
Yeah.
We had a 9-year-old student, and they had extreme suicidal ideation. They were peeling, tape off of a file cabinet and trying to wrap it around their neck. And
Yeah.
the parents didn't know what to do, didn't know how to handle this level of crisis. The teachers were struggling. So we called in that supportive services.
Yeah.
Like, how do we help the kiddo? How do we help the family? How do we keep everyone safe?
Everybody. Yeah.
And it's more long term.
Okay.
So that would be, and it could even be acting out. Like, if you've got a teenager, angst is a
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely.
And so if they're becoming verbally abusive or I'm not listening to you and I'm not doing that, those are behavioral health
Yeah.
issues. So how can we help support
Yeah.
the parents
Yep.
de-escalate and support this kid? So it doesn't even have to be like a suicidal
Yeah.
ideation or depression. It could be something more. It could be anxiety. It could be acting out. Like, there are supports available for the kids and the families to keep them safe.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's an incredible resource.
Yeah. And then worst case scenario, I mean, if you're talking to someone who is suicidal and they don't want to get help and you're really, really scared, you can always call 911 and request a well check.
Yeah.
And they'll go out and make sure that that person is safe and supported, get them where they need to go to
Yeah.
get the help they need at that time.
Yeah. And it's incredible. There's so many awesome resources.
Yeah.
And they're not helpful unless we know about them. And so we want to make sure that you guys are fully equipped to know about them. And so over these next couple videos that we send out over the next couple months, we will keep reiterating these resources so that we make sure that we know them and we have them in front of us, because like she said, a call could save a life, a question could save a life. And that's just absolutely incredible.
And education is what's going to support our community through these crises.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. This really means the world. And I know our leaders, we've got some incredible leaders who care deeply about our students. And so this will help us love them more and make sure that they're safe. And so we want to thank you for being here. We're excited for our next video and learning session with you. But leaders, we appreciate you. We love you. Thanks for giving this a listen. And we will see you for our next video next month.